Alright, we're going to finish Chapter 8 with this video. This is 8-5, Day 2. And again, we're going to solve non-right triangles. Our third way we do that is called law of cosines. And for law of cosines, you still need to know three parts, and these three parts are in the SAS position or side, side, side. So SAS, remember, is two sides known and then the angle that connects them. And obviously side, side, side is knowing all three sides. You will not be able to use law of sines when these three parts are given, and I'll point that out on the first one when we actually get to it. You can't set up one proportion where you have a side and an angle, so you have to use law of cosines. So let's see how law of cosines, and this one's not nearly as simple to set up as law of sines was. So we've got ABC for our triangle, side A, B, and C. Okay. If you have SAS given, you are going to find the missing side first. So find missing side. So let's say the two sides we know are B and C. So I know little c, I know little b, that means I know angle A. So if those are my three known parts, we would be finding side A first. And the way it works is this unknown side, little a squared, is going to equal the two known sides squared and added together. So b squared plus c squared. And order doesn't matter here because we're adding the two together. After that, we're going to subtract a big product of things. And what you have to multiply, number 2, times by the b side, times the c side, times the cosine of the known angle A. So that's 2 times b times c times the cosine of A. That's all one big product there as your third part. So side squared plus side squared minus this big chunk. Okay, and it would be the same thing as I rotate around here. So let's say we've got B known, and then that would mean C and A are known, and we wouldn't know B. So we would be finding little b first, and you would have to use the two known sides squared and added together, A squared plus C squared. Then you would be subtracting a product of 2 times A times C times the cosine of that known angle. That known angle was B. So finding B, you know angle B. And then the third version of it, if we rotate around, not that we have to write all these down, would be if we knew angle C, and then we would know A and B. So little c would be the first thing we would find by taking the two known sides squared and added. Then subtract 2 times A times B times the cosine of angle C. So now we take each of these. I'm going to do one with algebraically. If we have side, 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 that means we're going to find an angle first. So let's go over here. Side, 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 you will find an angle, missing angle. Find a missing angle. And we're just going to do the algebra and then once, so you don't have to do it every single time. So let's take this first one. A squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c times the cosine of A. And let's solve this thing for the cosine of A. So we want to kick everything else over to the other side except for the cosine of A. So the first steps algebraically that we would do is subtract each of these over. So we'd be subtracting b squared subtracting c squared over here. So, subtract b squared, subtract c squared. So over here on the left, we will have a squared, subtract b squared, subtract c squared. And it wouldn't matter which of these two come first because they're both subtracted. But a squared has to stay at the front of this because it's the only positive one. That will leave, this negative is still here, this subtraction is still here, making this a negative 2 bc times the cosine of a. So again, I want to leave this here. I can get rid of this whole chunk by dividing, because that whole chunk is multiplied by the cosine of a. So we're going to be dividing by negative 2 bc. So the cosine of a equals a squared minus b squared minus c squared divided by negative 2bc. Alright, I want to point some things out here. If you are looking for angle A, notice that the corresponding side of little a comes first in this problem, and it's the only time it's used. So those two are connected. The negative 2 is multiplied by the two sides that are subtracted in the top. So for the angle you're looking for, its side only shows up once. The two sides that are subtracted show up twice. Those are the two that come down to the denominator. So if we look at this pattern, we should be able to write an equation for the cosine of b without doing all the algebra. And that's what I want to do now. So if I was finding angle B, that means I have to start with its side length squared, which is little b squared. Then I would be subtracting the other two, and it doesn't matter which one comes first. I'm going to choose alphabetical order, so minus a squared minus c squared. So b with b, that has to be the first thing in our equation. Down here we always have a negative 2. And then it's the two sides that are subtracted that come down here. So negative 2 times a times c. And then for the third one, cosine of c, if I set this up correctly, I know I've got to start with side little c and then subtract the other two known sides, which are b squared and a squared. Oh, I guess I didn't go alphabetical order there, but that doesn't matter. They're both subtracted. In the bottom, negative 2, and then the two sides that are subtracted, b and a. Okay, now let's practice this. It can be a calculator challenge if you don't use parentheses correctly, but let's get going. So, first example. I'll leave that there so it's handy. Let's see, we got DEF. We've got 21 degrees here, 18, 16, asking you to find side DE. And DE would be little f. Okay, if you just had this on a quiz or a test and you thought, oh, I like law of sines because it's easy, if you look, 21 is not across from anything, 18 is not across from anything, and 16 is not across from anything. To use law of sines, you have to have a side and an angle pair known. So we have to use, this is SAS, we have to use law of cosines. So we are going to find side F. So if you remember the positioning of everything instead of the letters, because I don't have A, B, and C on here, that's your best option. So I know when I am finding a side length, I have it squared, so that'll be f squared, equals, it's the two other sides that I know, both squared and added together, so that'll be 18 squared plus 16 squared. Then I subtract 2 multiplied by each of those numbers, so times 18 times 16 times the cosine of the corresponding angle. The cosine for angle F is 21. Now, when I crank through this, you could do this all in one line on your calculator, well, most calculators. You should practice it to make sure you can get this. Otherwise, figure out where you need parentheses. But most calculators will do this all in one line. So I've got 18 squared plus 16 squared minus 2 times 18 times 16 times the cosine of 21. Don't stop anywhere through that whole thing. So notice, this is F squared, 42.26. To get F, opposite of squaring is square rooting. I'm just going to square root that last answer and get 6.5. So F is about 6.50. And that's it. If you see the pattern in the formula, they're not bad. And then take your time with the calculator. Let's practice a couple more. Let's go L, M, K, 15, 10, and 8. And our goal here is to find the measure of angle M. So this time I've got side, side, side known. So if we look down here, it's one of these deals here. So I've got cosine of M that I want to set up. So again, notice the positioning. I tried to teach you about the positioning of things instead of the A, B, and C. So if I had to go cosine M, I know because I'm doing angle M here, this has to be side little m here. Has to be. So that means I need the 15 squared first. Then it doesn't matter because they're both subtracted. The same thing is happening with these two. So now I can subtract 10 squared and 8 squared. Divide by, in the bottom there's a negative 2. And then it has to be the two subtracted sides that come down here and multiply. So that means the 10 and the 8 have to come down. Okay, now it's calculator time. It's going to be 2 steps. To do this on the calculator, you will need parentheses. You will need parentheses around the numerator and then parentheses around the denominator, so the calculator knows to do all of that first, do all of that next, and then divide. So, calculator time it is. Parentheses, 15 squared minus 10 squared minus 8 squared, divide, parenthesis, negative 2 times 10 times 8. So I get a negative 0.38125. Don't worry about that negative. Now to figure out the m, we have to do the inverse cosine. So to get m, we are going to inverse cosine that negative 0.38125. So inverse cosine, my last answer, I'm getting an angle of 112 degrees. So take your time, good setup, good calculator skills. Let's go with one more. I think this is the harder one, so let's do one of these. I have 2 more, but I don't know. I'll see how I feel after I get through this one. Let's go with another one of these. Maybe we better practice them both. Yeah, let's flip-flop back and forth. We'll go all of them. I know. Decide, Mrs. Schwartz. What are you doing? We'll go with 2 more. It won't be long. Yeah. So, XYZ. 34 degrees here. 4 here, 10 here. Our goal is to find ZY. That means the length of ZY, that would be side little x. Again, can't do law of sines here because we don't have a side and an angle that we know. So, side length. So back to this version of the formula. The side length you want squared equals the 2 known sides squared and added. That would be the 10 and the 4. then we subtract. It's 2 multiplied by these two sides, and then the cosine of the angle. So we're doing this whole chunk, which has 4 parts to it. The 2, the 4, the 10, and then it ends with the cosine of the only known angle. So times the cosine of 34. And again, when you crank through this, that will be x squared, and then you'll have that extra step of square rooting. So 4 squared plus 10 squared minus 2 times 4 times 10 times the cosine of 34. 49.68. Square root that. 7.05. And we'll practice one more, and we'll cut you loose. So, number 4. I'd like to be calling on people to do these, but it's not going to happen. Oh, decimals, nice. 5.9, 9.6, and 10.5. Let's see. If I asked you to find the smallest angle here, would you remember which one is the smallest? Hopefully you remember that the smallest angle is across from the shortest side. So that would be angle Q. Okay, so again, no law of sines, but we can do law of cosines. That is where we set up the cosine of the angle you want, in this case, Q. Now look for the pattern. If I want angle Q, I need side Q here, and then the other two. So side Q is the 5.9. The formula says subtract the other two now, and square them. Then in the denominator, there will be a negative 2 multiplied by the 2 that are subtracted. Lots of decimals and timesing going on here. I better use parentheses. This will give us the cosine of Q. So we'll be doing an extra step at the end. Use parentheses around your numerator and your denominator when you type all this in. So I'll clear it all. Parentheses, 5.9 squared. Subtract 9.6 squared. Subtract 10.5 squared. Close. Divide, parentheses, negative 2 times 9.6 times 10.5. 0.8313. Have the calculator tell you the angle by doing the inverse cosine of 0.8313. 34 degrees. All right, that ends the chapter and law of cosine.